Welcome back to the Gruber Morning Show. I'm Pete Gruber.
I'm Mark Schaffner. Good morning and welcome to our podcast.
We are here to entertain you and talk about all things EV related and even touching on some artificial intelligence stuff today. In fact, we might as well start there. That car that you see behind Mark and I is a rendering of a Tesla Roadster as requested through artificial intelligence. So it's not a real car. The snow, the landscape, the sky, none of that is real. This is all artificial intelligence rendering. And if you look very closely, you'll see things on this Tesla Roadster that really were never installed on a Roadster, such as a gas cap on the driver's side above the rear wheel.
I see that there.
The actual charge port door is actually above that on that portion that goes into the roll bar, which is also partially missing. But the funniest thing about this Tesla Roadster is if you look in the back, it's got an exhaust tip. And it's the first Roadster I'm aware of that has an internal combustion engine capability, or at least the exhaust portion. But having said all that, overall, it's just amazing what artificial intelligence can dream up. And so anyway, that's our image for today. We're going to keep that up for you guys to review.
You know, if you didn't know exactly what the Roadster looked like, you would not know that that's not a Roadster.
Exactly.
That's a really well done render.
Even the color, in the Roadster world, this is called electric blue, and I didn't specify that. I just said, give me a bright blue Roadster in Antarctica with snow everywhere, and it even threw buildings in there, which is a bit confusing. But we're having fun with artificial intelligence. We're actually using it quite a bit in the company these days. For example, the podcast that we do, the old method for me to collect the information, news and things like that, was to embed articles in my laptop here and then highlight the areas that were talking points. Today, I simply ask ChatGPT-4, take this article, condense it, bring out the salient talking points, and separate them with a line. And it does a much better job than I could.
It makes excellent summaries. People, you guys are probably not going to know when we're talking of something that was AI generated versus talking off the original articles.
But for those of you that joined us last week for the interview that we did with Ingmar Anderson, an author of a book, an EV book, what was the name of it?
The Future is Electric.
Future's Electric, yep. He pointed out at one point that he also used ChatGPT-4 to help write the book. And it's great at collecting data. You have to verify everything, of course, condensing, like Mark says. And oftentimes it gives you an interesting twist, different language perhaps. You can even insert the emotion that you want to invoke, whether it's serious, whether it's sarcastic, whether it's humorous. And he said that he was able to generate this book within 2 weeks using artificial intelligence.
And it's just amazing. It's about a 140-page book, an easy read, and good information. I definitely would recommend it. Again, it's called The Future is Electric. You can buy it on Amazon and take a look at it.
I think the funniest comment he made during the podcast interview was, at one point we were talking about how powerful AI is, and he said, well, you have to be careful because at times it does hallucinate.
Yes.
Kind of humanizing this whole technology. Looks like we have a bunch of questions coming in. Why don't we get to a few of those, Mark, and see what...
Yes. First, from Thomas Curtis, Kia Ora from New Zealand.
Welcome.
Welcome. I don't know how to pronounce the name of the city. The future is electrifying, he says, and the future is now. It's 5 a.m. New Zealand Standard Time on Wednesday.
You're up early then, Thomas. Thank you for joining us again. Facebook, Dave Stouffer, he says, sitting in my Model 3, ready for this show, climate control beautifully at 70 degrees F, and he's got a Model 3 long range. Welcome, Dave, and thanks for joining us.
Yes, and on Ray Johnson on YouTube has a really good question for us. He says, a recent look online at the 2012 to 20 Model S owner's manual under charging best practices says, for rear-wheel drive vehicles, Tesla recommends you keep your charge limit to 100% even for daily use, and you regularly charge your vehicle to 100%. If Model S has been parked for longer than a week, drive your vehicle as you normally would and charge to 100% at your earliest convenience. I thought we were supposed to be obeying the 2080 rule. Could this be a typo on Tesla's part?
Wow, it sure sounds that way.
It really does, because the advice that we give out and the advice that we've heard is that for the lithium ion battery packs, you always try to keep inside that 2080 rule. We've even seen stuff from engineering journals and research manuals about the discharge level over time of batteries, and charging it to 100% constantly does degrade the battery over time more than just charging it to 80%.
Absolutely. In the Tesla Roadster, actually, when you do a 100% charge, if you're going on a trip or whatever, there's a warning that pops up on the VDS screen and said, this will decrease the life of your battery, use it sparingly, blah, blah, blah. And of course, the chemistry of those cells is identical to what's in the Model S's. Now, if we're talking about LFP cells, things begin to change every time there's a new chemistry. So maybe that portion of the article was really intending to talk about the Model 3 or the LFP versions.
I'm wondering about that, because it does say, going back to 2012, I know on my 2012 Model S that I drive, if I have it charged to 100% regularly, after a couple days, I get a message on my MCU center console that recommends that I bring it down to the daily driving limit instead of the full charge trip limit.
Interesting. Well, if any of the rest of our audience have any ideas or any suggestions, we'd love to hear from you. But yeah, so it looks like TikTok, JMac, welcome. You guys have done a great service work in my 2014 Model S, 85 to 15,000 miles on my 85, and still charges to 238 miles.
Wow.
Do you guys install those white seats? Does that strap over the existing seats? I think we have some extra seats in stock, and up in Building D, actually.
Yeah, I think we do.
So yeah, we could certainly install some different colored seats for you, or replace the ones that you have.
Yeah, and it looks like Richard changed the question as we got it, too. It actually says 115K miles, not just 15K miles.
Oh, okay, there we go.
And the fact that you still charged to 238 miles, that's a good, strong battery for definite.
It is indeed, yeah. Now, Facebook, we have an observation here by Dave Stouffer. Welcome, Dave. He says, this entire podcast can one day be AI generated, if not already.
Hold on a second.
If not.
I got an interruption here.
All right, we got an interruption from our social media team.
So, Pete, you may need to pull up Twitter on your computer. I'm still trying to verify if this is accurate, but the Drive Tesla Canada that just retweeted our 3 Roadsters for sale, Elon Musk just commented on it saying these are increasingly rare.
Oh,
no kidding. Okay, there we go. I'm bringing up Twitter now.
While you're bringing up Twitter, Pete, and getting Elon's comment, let's talk a little bit about that. I'll start it, and then you can fill in.
Absolutely.
What if you could go back in time, in Tesla time, that is, and buy a brand new Roadster? Would you want to do it? Recently, a person came over to Pete and said, I have 3 brand new US spec left-hand drive Roadsters from Tesla. There's a Radiant Red Sport, a very orange Sport, and a very orange base model. These were found in sea containers. They appear to be brand new, 0 miles, and they've been sitting since 2010. So why don't you take it from there?
Okay. So, in the car world, and I'm an old car guy myself, there's this holy grail, this elusive barn find vehicle. And every once in a while, somebody opens a sea container, a old building, a barn, a parking garage, and under tarp they find some magnificently preserved, or sometimes trashed or beat, but
Hmm.
extremely early vintage car. And this could be, exotic Italians, the Lamborghinis, for example.
Yeah.
It could be the Ford,
Like
the
an early
Performance.
Mustang or something like that. Or,
Exactly, yeah, and or the old Mopars. And it occurred to me that this barn find concept always ignites the auto community because it's an interesting find. It's unexpected and all that. We've never had that in the EV world because they haven't been around long enough. Suddenly, we've got an EV barn find. Now, the story on these three roadsters goes something like this. In 2010, Tesla sold three roadsters to a customer in China. They had them shipped there in separate sea containers. They arrived, and the buyer abandoned them. So they sat there since 2010, mind you,
Mhm.
until December 15th of 2020, accruing storage charges. And so here we are with three brand new roadsters, never been driven, still have the accessories in the trunk in boxes. We think that those are going to be charge cables, and then an external box, a large box, which wouldn't fit in a trunk, which most likely is the hard top with a carrying case, which is about 4 feet by 4 feet by maybe 14 inches deep. So these sea containers were opened up and they found these roadsters, and a current customer bought these three and now is bringing them back to the United States unless he can sell them in China. So what we did was on our Roadster matchmaking site, we posted the only pictures we have so far are pretty rough. They're inside the sea container. They're not very clear. But we also had the Roadster, the foremost global Roadster historian, Tom Greiner. And I hope,
Mhm.
Tom, you don't mind me mentioning your name. But every car brand has an expert. In the Mopar world, it used to be Galen Govier, who used to verify that you had a numbers matching Hemi, whatever Mopar. Well, Tom Greiner verified the colors on these and the VINs, and it turns out there may have been a fourth one that was involved in this, VIN 1085.
Oh, really?
We
Okay.
haven't tracked that one down yet. So, what's going on right now is we have posted these on our Roadster matchmaking on our website, and you can see the information that we have so far. We are now offering these for sale, or this new owner is. And a lot of speculation. What kind of customer would buy these? And he asked me, should I sell them separately? Who's going to be interested? I said, first of all, the person that buys these cars should not be a person that's going to start driving this car because they want to test a
Right.
Roadster.
Right. Absolutely.
The instant you start accruing mileage on this car, you're going to decrease its value. Now, unfortunately, this is probably going to be one of those purchases where you end up with a rare Picasso hanging on a wall somewhere, only to look at. This is not a car that you're going to be able or want to be able to enjoy on the road, putting mileage on it and decreasing its value. The second thing he asked me, should I sell them separately? I said, well, it would seem to me that the right investor, the right collector for these three cars would be someone that appreciates the fact that they have completely vintage version cars, never been driven, brand new, and they should be sold as a set. It's kind of like adopting children, I mean, why
Oh,
would you want
yeah.
to separate the son and the daughter? You kind of want to keep them together. So first pass, what we're suggesting is let's see if we can find an investor that is willing to take all three of these off the market.
Okay, Pete, sorry, I got to interrupt. We got to come up with a response to Elon and to Tesla, Drive Tesla Canada. We're going
Okay.
to say we're talking about it live right now on Twitter and all our other platforms. Is there anything else you want us to include in that post, in our response? And there's a lot of people, by the way, it's going semi-viral right now where there's a lot of people saying, "Can I have one? I want one." So I think we'll have plenty of interest at this
Okay.
point.
Well, some rules of engagement. We offer a free Roadster matchmaking site. And our mission, we're not involved in commissions or, the financial negotiations. Our job is matchmaking. We're a dating service, and we're going to unite the seller with the buyer. So anyone that is interested, feel free to contact us through evie@gruber.com. And what we will do is we will give you contact information for the actual owner of these 3 vehicles so you can work your best deal with that individual. So that's the first rule of engagement. The second thing I would suggest is, we try to discourage the low ballers. This is not a type of activity where we suggest that you buy these and flip them and squeeze the seller. These are very rare collectible items, and they should be treated with respect.
Well, these are better than a barn find. A barn find is going to have some dust on it, or any kind of potential wear or
Rodents.
critters.
Yes, rodents have made a nest inside the car. Yeah.
These things have been in an enclosed sea container, so they've basically been sealed for the last 13 years and preserved. And it's better than a low mile car. I mean, you can read on Car and Driver, and they'll talk about, hey, we found a 1969 Chevy Camaro. Everything's original on it. It has 1,500 miles. Grandma passed away recently, and this was her first car when she was growing up, blah, 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 blah. This is better than that. These have basically 0 miles.
Yeah. And it is the first EV barn find.
Yeah.
Which makes it also historic, And if you think about it, with only 2,000 or so cars left, do we really think that there will be another 3 like this that will pop up? This is probably it.
Probably not. This is probably it. We, with our Roadster census that we have on the GruberMotors.com site, we've accounted for over 2,000 of these already.
Right.
And so we know that there are very, very few Roadsters out there in the wild, maybe a couple of hundred that haven't been accounted for. And we've just found 3 that have virtually 0 miles. I say virtually because you're probably going to find that it has somewhere between 1 mile and 5 miles. It takes them a couple miles, the manufacturer, when I mean them, to drive the car, to make sure that it drives, to get it onto the transport truck, to drive it off the transport truck and load it in the sea container.
Sure. And if we have Elon involved in this, if you would like to chime in, Elon, let us know typically what kind of mileage would be on a car that was never transferred over to the owner yet officially.
Yeah.
Are there some test miles on this, or are they really 0? As the problem is at this point we cannot take a reading on the Roadsters because these batteries have been unused since 2010, which, by the way, brings up another interesting point. In the world that we live in, we repair Roadsters, of course, and we repair brick Roadsters, and oftentimes we get Roadsters that haven't been charged for anywhere from months to years. Once a Roadster is bricked, it's basically shut down, and it is no longer able to give you any kind of telemetry information about its condition, mileage, calculated amp hour capacity. There are ways that we can wake up the 12-volt system in a Roadster to get some of that information, even a log file. But none of this can be achieved sitting in China inside a sea container at a dock without some, technical expertise and somebody that knows what they're doing with a laptop. So at this point, we basically know very little about these cars. One thing that we're speculating is, it would seem to me that if a car was being shipped from the factory, from Tesla, to somewhere else, and it's going to be delayed for some time, there's a service plug on the ESS battery pack, which can be pulled. And what that does is it stops all of the drain on the battery, kind of like the later model Teslas, which you can't brick. There are contactors inside that open up.
Right.
So what we're hoping is that these service plugs onto 3 cars were pulled at the time they were inserted in the sea container. The second question then becomes, is it possible, remotely possible, that these battery packs are still good? Because it's essentially like having inventory on the shelves. The batteries, the cells are sitting on a shelf for 13 years. The closest we have to that is we had a Tesla Roadster here a few years ago. It was a collision damage car. We had pulled the service plug. The battery was good, but we didn't get to it for like a year and a half or so. It sat outside. It was, it was pretty mangled, but the battery was intact. When we fired up that battery a year and a half later by putting the service plug back in, we were astonished to find the battery's quite healthy and still functioning. So it's remotely possible, and I don't want to paint too much hope here, too much blue sky, that these batteries in these 3 Roadsters, if the service plugs were pulled, may come back to life.
Right. Sure, you obviously have aging issues with the batteries. Even lithium-ion batteries that you buy that are rechargeable, go down to Costco and buy rechargeable lithium-ion Energizer batteries or Duracells. Even they will say that they have a shelf life that's 10 to 12 years.
Right.
At the same time, we've got cars from 2008. It's 2023 now, 15 years later, and they're still driving on these batteries, and they're still showing to be good batteries.
Yes.
So, if the service plug is pulled, I'm very curious to see how this goes, and I'm equally curious to see how this story develops over the next few days and couple of weeks. I'm sure that we'll be talking about this quite a bit on tomorrow afternoon's Tesla Roadster podcast as well.
So at this point, the cars are still in China. They're going to need to be moved out of there within 2 weeks, about middle of May. Essentially, the freight company wants their sea containers back. I was even going to propose, why don't we just buy the cars and the sea containers and solve the problem? But so the cars will eventually end up here in the U.S. unless they're sold in China. The customer wants to bring them to our service center so we can do a full analysis on the cars to see if these batteries still are good. So if they don't get sold, they will be here at Gruber Motor Company within a month or so.
Hang on a second. So I'm going to pull up the website.
Okay.
We have a lot of people tuning in on Twitter now because of this. So I'm going to pull up those so the audience can see the for sale page on our website.
Perfect.
And then we may just do another quick rundown on info for people that are just tuning in.
Okay. And in the meantime, while you're pulling up that website, I'll go through some questions here quickly. We've got YouTube. Aman Luthra, he says, your thoughts on Tesla Cybertruck and artificial intelligence. Well, I don't know if the two are synonymous yet, but I'm sure there are elements of AI in any of these new technologies.
I think the Cybertruck is, it's going to be, I'm not sure if I would call it revolutionary, but there's definitely a lot of evolutionary steps that are going on, from the gigapresses that are being used to make large portions of it that simplifies the manufacturing process, to the full self-driving that they're trying to put into it, which is very much AI related. It's going to be an exciting truck to see when it comes out later this year.
All right, I'm pulling these back up.
Okay. There we go. So that is on the Gruber Motors website, and it is under Roadsters for Sale or Roadster Matchmaking. And you can see the preliminary pictures that we received. There are more coming in. There will be more detail. Do you
want to talk about the differences in these 3 things here?
Sure. The differences, of course, are color. We've got 2 Very Orange, which is the Roadster name for that orange, and a Radiant Red, which is a more maroonish red. The Fusion Red is the Ferrari red. It's a brighter red. 2 of these are sport version cars, which means it's a little bit faster, and it's got the little sport emblem on the back and the door sills. And one of them is a base version model. The speed, or the 0 to 60 times on a sport, is 3.7 seconds. On a base model, it's 3.9 seconds. So those are the differences between the 3 cars at this point.
We didn't have any background on that, right? Why one was a base and the other 2 were sport? Why they didn't just buy 3 sports or anything?
We don't at this point, no. Although when the second batch of pictures comes, we ask for some very specific key elements in the pictures. See that little red S in the middle of the seat? That was done with sport versions, and typically the S was the same color as the exterior of the car. On a base version, it would all be the same color Tesla. What is amazing is the condition of the inside of these cars. And it's the closest thing that you can get to doing some time travel and going to Tesla in the
Sure
early
is.
days to pick out your Tesla Roadster and experience the new car odor on the inside.
One thing that I did not know that I saw in the pictures here is that at least one of those Teslas, that picture right there, it's showing a double din touchscreen upgraded stereo system. I did not know that there were different options like that for the stereo systems.
Yeah, these are all 2.5s, all three of these Roadsters. And then,
Okay.
yeah, in the 2.5s, they had the double din version, and the front clip is a bit different than the 2008s or the 1.5s or the 2.0s.
Okay. And then love seeing that the picture of that red one still in the foam on either side, making sure that it's packaged and kept safe inside the sea container.
Yep. Yep, very much so. That box that's in the front left corner most likely is looks like a cardboard box from here. If that would be the hard top that would be packaged in the box. What we don't know yet is whether these are visible carbon fiber hard tops, which is a possibility. Quick bit of history. Every single Roadster hardtop started off as carbon fiber. They're all carbon fiber.
Mm-hmm.
It was the rejects that didn't have perfect weaving that ended up being painted the color of the car. So that's why there are fewer visible carbon fiber hardtops. And in the day, I think that was a $6,000 option. And there was some information that indicates that I don't know if all three of them, but at least one or two of these may have visible carbon fiber hardtops.
That's going to be fascinating to see. Well, let's go ahead and get back to some of our questions because I know that we have the questions stacking up. Thomas Curtis first says, if you have a lithium ion phosphate battery, you can charge to 100%. Thomas, you're exactly right. That's one of the newer technologies that's out there for cars, and one of the advantages to that technology is that you can charge it to 100% and ignore that 20/80 rule. Jiminy Stack has joined us on Facebook. A full 100% charge also reduces regenerative braking. First, welcome back, Jiminy. Love having you on. And second, you are exactly right.
It actually stops regenerative braking because when you're at 100%, you don't want to backfeed any more current into that battery.
Right, because you could overcharge it and eventually catch it on fire. I always love the story you tell of the T0 up on Pikes Peak.
Yeah.
That's they charge the battery full and then realize that oh gee, we're going to be headed down the mountain. That's going to cause problems with the batteries.
After making a trek up to Pikes Peak, thinking that they didn't have enough power to get back down.
Yes.
And they ended up spending 2.5, 3 hours circling the parking lot at the top of Pikes Peak to shed some of that charge, so they didn't boil the lead acid batteries on the way down. Because remember, the T0,
right, that's right, had lead acid.
Optimus, spiral wound batteries.
On YouTube, Thomas Curtis, new old stock rocks. Could not agree more. On YouTube, the Bion Danish Genome Institute. Good morning. Aren't those Roadsters bricked anyway because of a lack of charge?
We talked about that earlier. There is a remote possibility that if the service plugs were pulled, this has never been tested before, that after 13 years, it's possible there may be some life in those batteries because there is no drain. It would be akin to having a battery cell sitting on a shelf in a warehouse in inventory somewhere. Can they last 13 years is the question. And like you pointed out, the Tesla Roadsters have been around since 2008, and many of them still have legacy battery packs that are functioning.
That's right. So we think probably, yes, that they're bricked, but we don't know. And we hope we have the chance to find out.
It looks like we've got Foster Henderson coming in, one of our customers from Facebook. Welcome, Foster. He says, Pete, any update on Tesla ESS 3.0 battery pack? Also, update on solid state possible battery upgrades. Well, first of all, The 2016 replacement 3.0 battery packs appear to be having some problems, and we don't know yet whether it's the entire run from 2016
Right.
or select roadsters. In fact, Mark was the head engineer on that project, where we discovered that there was an impedance problem with certain 2016 upgraded cars.
That's right.
And the only update we have right now, Foster, is of the 2 cars that were in our service center and about 3 that we were aware of at either service centers or at the customer locations. At this point, Tesla is recommending a battery replacement, and we still don't have final validation that our findings are the same as what they're finding. And engineering is still working on it.
Yeah, the closest that we have as far as validation goes is simply that the service center here in Tempe, where the 2 customers who came to us have taken their cars, has gone to those 2 customers in both cases and said that they're going to need to have a battery replacement done.
Mm-hmm. The final part is solid state options for the Roadster. We are working, and there are other people around the globe that are working on a battery replacement solution. At this point, I don't know of anybody that has made enormous headway or has a product that is heading toward production and availability for the Roadster community. What I do have information, though, from Tesla, that their commitment to the Roadster is continuing to improve. Mm-hmm. They have begun to spend more time with the buyback Roadsters that they had purchased over the last couple of years or so. And they are spending more time extracting parts from those, putting them in inventory, and using the disassembly of those Roadsters as training tools to train more Roadster technicians.
Oh, that's great news.
They are also flying certain technicians back to corporate for Roadster training. And of course, they're continuing to make a battery replacement. Mm-hmm. So all the fears over the years and concerns that Roadster may be neglected by Tesla or that they will eventually stop support, we see just the opposite direction. We see a very committed company to their early adopters and to their first generation cars.
And that's been a big sigh of relief to us as well, because it seemed like in the early days of Gruber Motors that we were kind of on an island by ourselves, almost a Robinson Crusoe type of thing. But there are places popping up in the U.S. that independent places that do Roadster repairs. We're seeing better commitment from Tesla than we've ever seen before, and the future is exciting for that.
Yeah. And we're also seeing a lot of cooperation and collaboration between companies like us and Tesla, because everybody realizes at the end of the day, it's about the customers. It's about keeping the cars on the road, keeping them alive. So we're very pleased with the progress we've been making with Tesla.
Very much. On YouTube, Thomas Curtis has a comment about the 3.0 Roadsters. And it says, first he says, yeah, I bet they are bricked. And then he says, wow, a service plug. Nice.
And, it's this service plug. If you want to see where it is, go to our newsletters and go to the newsletter that says what to do when your Roadster gets bricked. And what you'll see is a plug that sits inside the car, basically, on the driver's side, and you have to be a contortionist to get to it. What I usually have done is I will pick a skinny teenager with long arms, and they're able to pull that out. Yeah. The rest of us have a very difficult time getting at that service plug. We actually had a customer that made a custom tool. It was a long steel bar with a hook on the end, and he was able to actually extract his service plug with that. But yes, the service plug on the Roadster is the equivalent of what the later model Teslas have, which is an automated method of disconnecting the battery from any sort of further drain.
Okay, guys, real quick, one more interruption. I'm going to
Sure.
read you some of these replies on this Twitter post.
Okay.
Yeah.
One person saying, "I'll buy one right now in Dogecoin."
Okay.
Okay.
Or an NFT. Yeah.
A lot of people are saying, "Elon, you should buy them. You should buy them." One says, "Send them to Mars." And then there's another one that just said, hold on, I'm trying to find it here. "We should buy these and put them on display." And then somebody else responded, "Yes, exactly where they belong."
Right.
So
and
people have a lot of love for these. Yeah.
It's not far-fetched either. I mean, like the Peterson Auto Museum, this would be an ideal place for cars like this, a car that has never seen the road.
Oh, I was thinking just exactly that same thing. And Peterson Auto Museum is one of the larger ones in the Southwest, but they're by no means the only one. I think of a classic car auto museum up in San Francisco. I'm sorry, I don't remember the name of it, but they specialize in a wide range of cars from the early 1900s all the way up to modern cars. This would be a great car to put in one of those museums as well.
And we'd love to hear from you guys as well. The options are selling them individually or splitting them up. I'm very committed to keeping them together, but if you have different ideas, we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, definitely would love to. On YouTube, Zanga has a question that we hear regularly. The sunglasses.
What's our response this morning?
You need to wear them to find out.
Exactly, yes. And we do have some swag coming this way. We're going to have some.
Yeah, Mark, you want to tell them a little about the signature that you showed me?
Yes, we've got leather sunglass cases and sunglasses coming. For the first cases that we have, we're going to have a signature series of them. I believe we're going to come up with about 100 or so of the signature series. For those people that are those people that we choose, I guess is the way to say it. There's also going to be Founder Series. And basically, we took the text off the Founder Series from the Roadster and off the Signature Series from the Roadster, and that is what is on these sunglass cases. When you come back on Thursday or even tomorrow for the Roadster podcast, I'll make sure that we have a couple of them sitting up here. We've got several of them completed, and we'll be bringing them in.
So a couple of news items. Usually on our podcast, for those of you that are new joining us, we cover questions, new topics, and also news items.
Real quick, Pete, I had one question for you before we get off those cars. What do you think is more rare or a better collector buy? The 2 VIN number 3s or the 3 brand new, never driven Roadsters? By the way, for those who don't know, we have 2 VIN number 3 Model S and Roadster, some of the rarest, on our website as well right now for sale.
Well, let's give them a bit of background then. Yes, we've got validation prototype number 30 on our Roadster matchmaking site, which just got a bid, by the way, for $250,000.
Okay.
We also ended up with Founders Roadster VIN number 3. Now, let's put it in perspective. Elon's got Founders 1. Martin Eberhard has Founders 2.
I'm pulling it
and this customer has Founders VIN number 3. You can see it on the right there next to that Model S. And in order to get a Founders car, by the way, it was usually family, VIPs, major contributors, financial contributors to the organization. And so it's quite a remarkable car. The Founders series then were replaced with the Signature series, which are also very special. In the Roadster world, in the U.S., they only made 100 Signature Roadsters. And a lot of these went to celebrities, Matt Damon, Robin Williams, for example, Arnold Schwarzenegger, George Clooney. List goes on. And, of course, some of the financial investors or family.
Right.
I have VIN number 5, for example, Signature VIN number 5. So these are very special cars. They're highly pedigreed. This particular owner, though, not only was able to land Founders number 3 Roadster, but when the Model S came out, he landed Founders number 3 Model S. And I won't give you the name, but if you there's a video out there that shows Elon and George Blankenship, I believe, up on stage, releasing the first Model S's. And the maroon Model S that you see up on that stage with the keys being handed by Elon to the customer is this very car. So what we have here, they're being sold as a set, 2 Founders VIN number 3. Again, in the world of car collecting, this will never happen again.
Right.
To be able to get 2 cars with the same VIN, both Founders status. So being sold as a set, similar colors. The other thing that's interesting about these cars is, and it speaks about Tesla's early history, there's some imperfections in this Model S. And a couple podcasts ago or so, we had a early Tesla employee on the podcast, employee number 195, the first mechanic ever at Tesla. And I asked him, I said, we've got the car, we've got the Model S, the Founder Series, and it looks like there's some panel gaps here. What are the imperfections all about? And he says, well, I know exactly what that's about. The engineer that we hired at the time to buy the dies to stamp the metal for the Model S, what came from the world of steel, not realizing that aluminum relaxes and springs back. So you can't use the same dies. And that, of course, immediately explained why the trunk sits up a little bit higher. So anyway, we had talked to the customer about, improving the car, and he said, no, it doesn't make any sense. This is part of the history. It's kind of like the stamp with the upside-down airplane, which is now
Right.
$2 million, or the penny that has the wrong date stamped on it. This is part of what makes these cars so unique and so valuable. So anyway, that's on our Roadster matchmaking site. For those of you, any of you that are into collecting cars, this is going to be a rare set to land. And
Okay,
then
but-
there's...
So the question, which one is rarer?
Okay, so the question, which one would... Well, first of all, when I buy a car, I buy it to drive.
Right.
So for me, a collector car like this makes no sense. Now, if I had a huge house and I had, art on the walls, and I was into collecting and just looking at beautiful things like this, it would be a different story. But if I were to buy a car, it's something that I want to experience 100%. One of our customers put it very aptly. It's kind of like getting married and never consummating the marriage. So my favorite would be a car that I can drive.
So it's going to be kind of an apples and oranges comparison then, as far as which one's more rare, which one's more desirable, because you're going to have two different types of customers looking for these two different types of cars.
Yeah, I don't think Jesse's done yet. He's got another question for me here.
Well, I was just going to say that means that maybe whoever buys them should just buy them all.
Good point.
Yes.
Good point. Yes. Yeah, there you go. And, there are people that are into collecting cars like this. They've got, like Jay Leno, for example. Jay, are you listening? These cars have you written all over it. And, of course, there are probably some other silent investors that aren't as visible as Jay that hopefully are listening to this podcast and are becoming aware that there's some highly collectible special cars available right now.
Yes. There's a couple questions that we'll get to, and then let's get into the news items. Johnny Doe on TikTok says, where can I get one of those Tesla mini models? He's referring to a small Tesla Roadster 2.0 that we got. And Pete, I don't remember. You got that as a gift, right?
My son bought that for me for Christmas, and then they had the foresight to take it with them when they went to the Peterson Tesla opening. They ran into Franz von Holzhausen, and it has his autograph on the hood of the car now. There's a
awesome.
gigantic Franz. And for those of you that don't know Franz is the brains behind the Tesla Model S design and has been with Tesla now for a decade, I believe, and is instrumental in a lot of the wonderful designs coming out of Tesla.
So TikTok can't see this, but I have it up. So if you want to say for TikTok that they can just search Google for Tesla diecast, and it'll bring up the website where you can get one of those.
All right. Tesla diecast, 1:18 scale model, and it looks like it's still available. Ooh, it's not cheap. I didn't realize my son spent that much. $175. Thank you, Max.
They also have one for the Semi, too, I think.
Oh, okay. Oh, there we are. Yeah, there is a die-cast semi-model as well.
Oh, we're going to have to get one of those one of these days.
What's so amazing is Tesla has grown so large that you can take virtually anything, like even a bottle of tequila, and even empty ones now sell for $800. So
Right.
my hat's off to you, Elon. You did something right there.
Foster Henderson on Facebook has come to us as well. Foster Henderson drives Roadster number 996, and he tells us 996 is running well, not for sale, LOL. It says, hey, can you guys make air filters for the PEM intake so the debris won't get in our cars?
Yeah, that has been offered a number of times. A conversation I had with actually Martin Eberhard a couple of years ago, and he said, "Why don't you guys complete that? Those scoops on the side of the Roadster were actually designed to be passive cooling for the PEM." It is a problem, and yeah, at this point, we are so busy trying to keep Roadsters on the road and Model
Well,
S's
yeah,
now
more
out of
Model
warranty.
S's.
Yeah, where we have a long lead time for Model S's. Roadsters we take immediately because there aren't that many options for the type of work that we do in the advanced electronics and repairing them. But once we get some extra bandwidth, some extra time, that's definitely on the drawing board, as are some very other exciting Roadster things that we're working on that I'm not yet at liberty to disclose.
Right. And Foster follows up with us. We were talking about, Model S versus Roadster, and on the two Founders threes versus the three Roadsters. He says Roadsters hands down, and for Foster, I could see that as well. On TikTok, J.K. Mack. I'm grandfathered lifetime supercharge. He has that 2012 Model S that he was just talking to us about recently. He says, just a few days ago, Tesla wants to offer 10 years of free supercharging if we buy a new Tesla and turn into our grandfathered Tesla.
Amazing. I didn't know they were doing that.
That's interesting.
It's brilliant if you think about it. They're going to be selling more cars soon.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's a very intriguing offer.
Sure.
Ultimately, I think Tesla's making a lot more money on their supercharging and on these other things that they have going on, full self-driving and stuff like that, than they're going to be making on the cars themselves.
Sure.
It's almost like the traditional automobile manufacturer, Ford, GM, Chrysler in the day. GMAC Finance is the money-making area of GM. Ford Finance has been historically the money-making part of Ford. This is another area where Tesla's the maker.
We've got a YouTube comment from Ian Caldwell. He says, Rich Rebuild should buy one of those brick Teslas from China to see if he could get it back on the road. Well, we know Rich. Rich does great work. It's not going to take much to get these cars back on the road. Tesla is making replacement battery packs, for example, so they would be able to get a 3.0 pack for all three of these. And as we had pointed out earlier, if that service plug was pulled, we're very intrigued by the remote possibility, that after 13 years, those packs may come back to life, and we can't wait to find out.
Oh, I think it's going to be exciting. Dublin Dave on YouTube says, my 2015 85D was in the body shop in December and January. In service mode, it was losing up to 6 miles per day just sitting. When charging the 200-mile range and sitting overnight, it'll show 159 miles on the guessometer. Should I be worried?
Where is Dublin Dave located? I'm trying to put my head around this. Was it in a extremely cold climate? What was that battery drain all about?
That is a really good question, Pete, because I know in the cooler temperatures, which we don't typically have here in Arizona, but we've had a cooler spring. The batteries will go into a self-conditioning mode to keep themselves heated up, and they will lose miles. Just like here in the summertime in Phoenix, batteries will lose miles in the afternoon for the same reason. They're actually turning on the AC even when the car is parked and keep themselves cool. And so I had the not quite misfortune, but close, of getting to Los Angeles a few years back in my Model S. I had 50 miles on it. We went to Catalina Island, my wife and I did, had a wonderful time, came back 3 days later and opened up the car and had 16 miles on it. And we freaked out. We had not had the car very long. We didn't know that the battery conditioning would happen like that.
Sure, thermal management can draw quite a bit of power depending which
and those things are actually very common. So Dublin Dave, I'm not sure that you should be worried. That's he says that he's in the Bay Area in California. So
Yeah, I'd be interested in the temperatures during that time.
I
Yeah, Bay
would be
Area.
too.
Yeah, that would be winter. It looks like YouTube. Thomas Curtis is joining us again. He's saying documenting the whole story of the three roadsters is really important. I agree. You could dedicate a whole story as a dedicated show or shows. For those of you interested in the interesting stories, and by the way, most roadsters, unlike any other cars, have interesting stories attached.
Yes, they do.
That's what makes so fun to work on these things. But we have on our website a gallery section, which actually documents some of these interesting stories, whether they were celebrity owned, whether they're unusual color combinations. And I would suggest if you like roadsters, that's a good place to hang out a bit and get some information about roadsters.
On Facebook, Foster Henderson says, nope, I have an S to sign unlimited supercharging, keeping my December 2016 S.
That's a good strategy.
Yeah, I think I would be with you, Foster. If I were offered 10 years of free supercharging to get a new Tesla, I think I'd still keep my old one.
So, yeah, getting to a couple of news items here, which is normally what we squeeze in, but today's been pretty busy, and we really appreciate the engagement. Yeah.
Just so you know, we can keep going as long as you want, but we're at 56 minutes.
56, okay. So, okay, here's an interesting article. Chinese giant EV, BYD says full autonomous driving is basically impossible. Well, I read the article and, I got their ideas on this, but I loved a comment that came in just after this headline. And it said, it's impossible for China right now because there isn't anyone in China to copy it yet.
Yeah, absolutely. Pete, I told you before the show, I have my own little rant on this one. I love looking back at history. I've done this several times now on the podcast. And so here's my look back at history about predictions that haven't gone quite right. In the 1850s, there was the prediction that talking on a telephone would cause you to be electrocuted. Okay. So you can't talk on telephones. I think that was one of the telegraph companies that said that, by the way.
Oh, good point. Yeah.
In the 1870s, there was a legitimate concern in England that women riding on trains could die if the train went too fast. What they said is that if a train is going more than 50 miles an hour, a woman might die because her uterus would fly out of her body.
Oh, my God. Okay.
In 1904, the New York Times writers actually published an article where they worried that brains would not be able to keep up with cars. If cars were going over 80 miles an hour, they said, the car's speed might be too high, and then the car would be running without the guidance of the brain, and all kinds of bad things could happen.
Fascinating. Okay.
So they said you can never, ever, it's going to be unsafe and impossible to drive more than 80 miles an hour. Even Einstein in the 1920s and 30s said that he thought nuclear power would be impossible to achieve.
Really?
So my take is, I think the jury is out on full self-driving. It's difficult. People are beginning to understand the complexity of what we in our human brains can process easily, and for some of us easily, and for some of us not so much. I won't tell you which side I'm on, by the way.
Okay.
But the fact is, dismissing it offhand, it sounds like one of these predictions.
Yeah.
We got to try. You don't know until you try. It wasn't that many years ago that people said it was impossible to go to the moon. And look at where, we've been in. It was 50 years ago. We went to the moon on less power than it takes to run a toaster nowadays.
Sure. No, I love the word impossible. It just challenges those that can innovate and create.
Yeah.
But, my take on this whole thing with self-driving is, let's put this back in perspective. We're both technical guys. You're on the coding side, hardware side. What would you trust more, a human being or a machine?
Oh, I'm going to trust a human being more.
You are?
At this point.
Driving.
At this point, driving.
Okay, at this point. All right.
But the fact is, there are many times when I trust machines more. Mm-hmm. Many, many, many times. If I want to see something of quality, I'm going to trust the machine that makes something perfect every single time over a human in many cases.
Sure. I mean, I can go on a rant here, and I usually do when it comes to driving, because like I pointed out many times, I love to drive cars, and
Yeah.
I take that very seriously, and I respect what's going on out there on the road when you've got a 4,000-pound missile that's hurtling along at 80 to 100 miles an hour. Not that I speed, mind you, but yesterday I'm going to get some parts. And I'm on the freeway, and I can't figure out why the person in front of me is going like 50 miles an hour. And I finally am able to pass her, and I see the cell phone up like this. And,
Yeah.
at that point, I wanted one of those train whistles to wake her up. But, I would place my bet on machines being far better drivers than human beings, especially now when we have so many distractions on the road. But anyway, that's my rant.
I know
my
what to
short
get
rant.
you for your birthday.
What's that?
It's a DeWalt, the little 20-volt lithium ion with the
Yeah.
handle. And on the top, instead of being a drill or something like that, it's a train whistle.
Oh, okay. All right.
You can
Well,
hear it from 1,500 feet away.
Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah. All right. So it looks like some more questions coming in. TikTok Smuggler's joining us. He says, "What's up?" Well, we've been going here for almost an hour so far. Welcome back.
Welcome back, smuggler. Bill Wood on TikTok, in talking about Tesla's offer, says 10 years, then the lifetime ends. Bad trade.
And what we don't know yet is how the electric cars, the EVs, are going to mature, and whether we'll be able to continue to drive them decade after decade after decade.
Yeah.
ICE vehicles, it's pretty predictable. You can continue to rebuild, but EVs look very promising, other than the battery, of course.
Other than the battery, but the way the new technologies are coming out, eventually there's going to be a demand for replacement batteries. When you have 2,500 cars like a Roadster, it's hard to move that needle. When you have 2.5 million cars like a Model 3, I will just about bet you that there's going to be new battery technology that's developed specifically for Model 3 or other cars like it.
And it looks like TikTok, Bill Wood, welcome back, Bill. He's going to add to some of those insane predictions that you talked about earlier. He says, they also said that swallowing small amounts of saliva over long periods of time will give you throat cancer.
There you go.
Sounds believable.
There you go. Smuggler has a response to us as well. He says, we trust our airplane autopilots every day. In fact, right now, several planes are on autopilot right now. He's right.
Yeah.
Not only is it for flying, but autopilot's gotten advanced enough that a lot of the takeoff and landing sequences are almost completely automatic as well.
Sure. And instead of 1 to 5 occupants in a car, we're talking about 280 people in a plane. So
Yeah, absolutely.
Smuggler sends us a gift, some flowers. Thank you very much. Joey's cleaning lady is coming back in, and he or she, you're going to have to tell us which it is, because we're not sure. What are your daily drivers to pick up parts? Oh, good question. The service manager was out yesterday at GMC. I usually go over and I get a Model S because I needed to haul some shelves, right?
Right.
Well, couldn't find one, couldn't find the keys, and rather than spend another half hour looking for something to drive, I came over to Gruber Power Services, where we still have ICE vehicles. And the reason is these guys go up on mountaintops, they go to remote locations, and everything is ICE in that world still. So I drove one of the GMC, you probably know.
Arcadias, yes.
Arcadia, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So I get in this thing, and that's when I was on the freeway,
Okay,
right?
okay.
Shortly after, the girl on her cell phone delaying me.
Yeah.
I finally get around her, and it goes ding, ding, ding. You're almost out of gas. I'm going, what the heck? They didn't fill this thing. So I had to stop at the gas station, right? And then I looked at it and I said, man, this thing is filthy. Well, there was a car wash across the street from the gas station. So what ended up was supposed to have been a 20-minute jaunt to get some shelves, ended up being like an hour and 15 minutes.
Oh, boy.
But the question was, what do I drive besides the Tesla Roadsters that I test drive every day? That would be one deviation, but the rest of the time I'm into electric vehicles 100%. And we have so many roadsters. I've got a different one every 2 or 3 days that I'm test driving. So I don't even think I have a car anymore, do I?
No, I think your car is sitting in the parking lot in parts.
My P90D Ludicrous, they needed a door handle one day or something, and so they took that off. And then there's something else, and I think it's become a parts car. I think you're right.
I don't think it's totally a parts car yet, but it's on its way.
It's on its way, right?
Ewan Caldwell on YouTube gives us a really interesting fact. Here in Ireland, she said, Ireland had its first road car fatality all the way back in 1869.
Wow. I wonder what type of vehicle it was and what kind of fatality. That would be a good thing to.
I do too.
Foster Henderson is back on Facebook. He says, "Okay, Pete, the Mutant Roadster." This was VIN 581, by the way. I think I remember that correctly. Going to offer hand-wound replica motors. Will it make them faster? You know, the story on this, Foster, is this car came in, it was bricked for a year and a half. It just sat out and back. And one day we said, you know, we've got a collision damage car. It's got a good battery. Why don't we put this one back on the road? And we need another test mule or a loaner for our customers. So we got it running. I'm going to try to make this a short story. Next thing you know, I see a post on Facebook and one of the Facebook sites, and they're talking about our VIN 581 being a special 0 to 60 in 3 second car. They're usually 3.7 or 3.9 seconds. Well, it turns out, and I won't add to this story very much, but one of our technicians, to join a Facebook site, decided to use the VIN of that car because you had to have a Roadster VIN in order to join this site.
Okay.
And that's how this whole thing started. Then the moderator or the administrator of this site told this story about how this was a special Roadster with a hand-wound motor. All right, so what do? I decide, hey, if this is true, this would really be cool. So I spent $260 on a draggy box. A draggy box at that time was like a little GPS recorder. And we're now using it, by the way, to give specs on Roadsters after we repair them, because it will actually tell you what your 0 to 60 times are and, you know, acceleration, all of that. So I buy this box getting ready to test VIN 581 to confirm a 3 second, 0 to 60 time. Because when I drove 581, it didn't feel that fast. But, you know, when you're pushing G's like that, it can be deceiving. Well, unfortunately, a fire occurred in our building and 581 was consumed. So I never got a chance to use that draggy, box on that. In the meantime, though, Foster, I did do some research. I even talked to Martin Eberhard about this. And he said, yeah, I don't know about hand-wound, motors, whether we were able to get any extra performance. He said in the early days, they did, however, have to match motors to PEMs because there was such an inconsistency in how the motors were made. So that's all I know at this point, and I'm sure that there is some further research that can be done, and one of these days when I get time, I'll do that. But in the meantime, 581 is in heaven and probably looking down at us and smiling.
I think it is. TikTok, Tam Wilson, Model 3 for under 40K is a deal changer. Sales numbers are reflecting this change. Tam, that's a topic that we may take up here within the next couple of podcasts. Not only the Model 3, but the Model Y price is coming down. We've seen, how Tesla's talking about how they want to be competing with Ford, not Mercedes. And it is continually shaking up the marketplace and has been since the first of the year. That's a good topic, and I think you're right, Tam. I think it is really a deal changer in that sense.
There's a company that makes visual graphs. And the one that I found interesting was they started in 1975. Where were most of the in what country were most of the cars being built? China wasn't even on the map.
Yeah.
It was U.S., Germany was definitely on that map. And then Russia started to crop up, the Soviet Union originally. But you know what? At some point in the last century, China began to dominate. And today, I think that graph still shows that China is the number one producer of cars.
Yeah, it's just amazing to see. We've talked about how China has grown so much economically, and it doesn't come home until you see things like the Chinese car makers that are the biggest in the world now. They've surpassed the U.S., they've surpassed Japan, they've surpassed Europe, and they've surpassed South Korea. There's nobody that equals them.
Yeah. And, we're all struggling here in the U.S. to find that sub $25,000 EV.
Yeah,
They already have them. They have lots of them.
yeah.
They aren't DOT approved yet, for a number of reasons. But yeah, it is remarkable how quickly China has come, up to speed.
It definitely is. Definitely is.
Well, I think we're probably getting ready to wrap here. I've got some news items that will spill over into Thursday this week. Remember, Tuesday is the EV podcast that we're doing now. Wednesday, tomorrow at 4 o'clock, we'll do the Tesla Roadster podcast. And then Thursday again, we do the EV podcast, but this time we have a special guest. It is Conrad Buck, who owns a Tesla repair organization in Germany. Specializes in roadsters, but is able to work on many different EVs. He will be joining us Thursday morning, correct, guys?
Yeah, we'll have Conrad. And then do you want to announce the time change for tomorrow's podcast? Are we decided on that yet?
Well, I think we're, I don't know, we can make a decision right now. Do we want to do the Roadster podcast at 10 a.m. in the morning or at 4 in the afternoon?
Well, we could still do tomorrow's at 4. We're
Okay.
going to be changing the time eventually, so we can just announce it now that we'll be moving it.
Yeah, we'll do tomorrow's at 4, and then we're going to move the Roadster podcast to be at 10 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, just like the Tuesday and Thursday podcasts. We like the engagement we get with the audience, and the amount of engagement that we get from people in Europe,
Yeah, the international.
internationally, who are willing to stay up past midnight frequently for us is just amazing. So we'd rather be able to engage with them when it's between 7 and 9 o'clock in the evening instead of midnight to 2 a.m.
And, actually, Conrad woke us up to that fact. He was supposed to be on a couple of weeks ago, but he was falling asleep at his desk, and we realized that 4 p.m. Mountain Standard Time is 1 a.m. In the morning in Germany. So we're going to make all three of these then starting next week, 10 o'clock. Feel free to join us. We have interesting special guests often. We'll have another author of an electric vehicle book, and we're going to be adding new guests all the time. We appreciate you joining us.
Thank you very much for the time. Encourage you to come tomorrow at 4 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. I'm sure we will have updates on the 3 Barn Find Roadsters as well.
Totally. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you then.
Thank you.